Stop what you're doing right now and subscribe to the newest college sports YouTube channel.
College football is around the corner, and the new BBOC channel is your destination for betting on college sports.
Interviews with former college athletes and other topics such as College Football 25.
Subscribe now and get in on the action.
Welcome in, Action Network Podcast, joined by Evan Abrams, our Director of Research and Media, Chris Raybon, one of our NFL experts at Action Network, Brendan Glasheen in the host chair. Welcome to a new show here on the Action Network Podcast. We will be joining you, we're going to record every Tuesday of the NFL season. We are coming to you Tuesday, September 3rd, 2 days before Chiefs and Ravens kick off the season. This is NFL Roundtable. I would like to call this, in my opinion, I won't speak for you two, like a debrief group therapy session. Make sure we stay sane kind of show. It's not like your typical pod we do here at Action, which we know most of you come for picks and analysis, deep dive, and there will be some deep dive stuff, but the idea is to sort of set the table for the coming week. Next week will be a lot easier, and weeks forthcoming because we'll have actual games to digest. But the idea here is to get ready for week one and some of the big storylines around the league. I'm sure injuries will pop up, quarterback competitions, quarterback injuries, coaching changes, whatever it may be. So this is our first one. So bear with us. It will be Evan or Brandon Anderson each week, and then Chris Raybon is our rotating guest of Action Network NFL contributors that will join us. So I will turn it over to you guys. We want to start. We're going to start Caleb Williams and the Bears taking on the Tennessee Titans. And the Bears are a favorite this week at 4.5. But Raybon, the idea here is we've got a quarterback in his first year, first overall pick. A lot of hype going into the Caleb Williams train. He's a favorite of more than a field goal, and there's some historical data that's important to note.
Yeah, and I'm not even going to steal Evan's thunder. So, Evan, break down the numbers, and then I'll get into my feelings about this game.
All right, so first of all, what's up, everybody? How's it going? But here's the stat to kind of set the table. So there have been 27 number one overall picks since the merger in 1970. And in their first start, they are 4-22-1 straight up, 7-20 against the spread. And famously, as I feel like we hear every year, David Carr, not Derek, in 2002 was the last straight up winner. So, but listen, Caleb laying 4.5 at home doesn't happen every time for a rookie, especially in this spot. So it's a little bit unique. Okay, Raybon, go.
All right, so listen, I love Caleb. I love what the Bears did on offense. However, it's all about the value, right? And this Titan team, they're either going to be sneaky good or at least feisty this year because, yes, Will Levis is unproven, but you bring in Callahan, who was, the offensive coordinator in Cincinnati for the last few years. You bring in Calvin Ridley and Tyler Boyd at wide receiver, Tony Pollard at running back, and Cushenberry at center, which is big. He was a top 10 center at PFF. And you draft a top 7 tackle. So a lot of the spots that you were struggling at last year, you've kind of solidified on the offensive side. And then on defense, you add L'Jarius Sneed at corner. You add Awuzie at corner. You add Diggs in the secondary. And then you trade for Ernest Jones, which went under the radar. Remember, he was a key piece of that Rams defense in the Super Bowl. And he was a top 13 linebacker among 82 qualifiers in PFF last year. Still great, rushing the passer, still can plug the run. So, and they still have Simmons in the middle. So this is not going to be an easy out, in my opinion, is Tennessee. So this Bears team, first start for Caleb, it could be a little rocky. So I think the value is with Tennessee.
Couldn't agree more. I need 4.5 or more. You're going to hear it a little bit later when we talk about some division long shots. I kind of like Tennessee. And the division is, obviously Houston's a class at the moment. And everyone thinks Jacksonville is going to be what they're going to be. And we've only seen minutes of Anthony Richardson. But I think Tennessee's done a lot in the offseason. You mentioned it all. And the upgrades are there. So I need 4.5 or more. But Tennessee, I'm with you.
How long do you guys think it's going to take for the Bears to settle in with Waldron as their offensive coordinator with all of these moving parts? It's a crowded room, right? At running back and at receiver, of course.
Listen, I like Chicago this year, but I think it's going to take a minute.
Okay.
Right? I do. And it's funny, early in the offseason when I was seeing all these moves, this was actually kind of one of the games I was like, I just want the extra half. I want more than 4 because this could easily be 23-20 Chicago. And, he gets the win. We talk about it since 2002, and everyone holding Tennessee tickets is happy.
Yeah, I think it's going to take about a month or so. I mean, you go to Houston after this and then Indy. So you're going to play 2 straight indoor games. So the offense actually might start clicking in that third week against Indianapolis because good luck naming the best player or good luck naming 2 good players in their secondary. I don't know if they have 2. They might have 1. I don't know if they have 2.
Okay. There's your Caleb Williams outlook week 1, but the guys like the Titans. High total in that game, too, 45.5, as Raybon mapped out their defensive additions and their reconstruction on the defensive end of the field. And, of course, adding Pollard, adding Calvin Ridley, and an upgraded center. And upgrade, in theory, an offensive line, which they ranked at the bottom of the league last year.
Yeah, that's the key for Tennessee. Yeah. It's been the key.
Okay. Very good. All right, let's move on. We're going to look at Mike Tomlin. Mike Tomlin is an underdog. There's another one for you, right? So David Carr is someone who comes up all the time, and Mike Tomlin is a dog. Steelers finishing above 500, which with the 17 games, you can't finish at 500. But the Steelers are a 3-point underdog at Atlanta. Arthur Smith returns to Atlanta. It's a revenge spot for Arthur Smith, who is Mike Tomlin's offensive coordinator. Simply put, Raybon, I'll start with you. Can Mike Tomlin keep it up as a dog?
Yeah, he can. I mean, this is disgusting. The line is about right. I don't really want either side of this, but if I'm betting it, I have to go Pittsburgh because for me, this defense just matches up well. I like Russell Wilson. He might ruin everything, but you have to consider on the other side that remember Pittsburgh has, Watt and when you're playing up against Watt, you don't want to be a primary 1-1 personnel team, which is what Atlanta is on offense. Their scheme is going to look completely different. And when you're 1-1, like 95% of the time, that's just less help you can give on Watt or on the other side as well. Porter, 6'2", has the size to match up with London. Jackson on the other side is fast, against Mooney. So they match up really well. You still got Dez roaming back there. So it's nothing to do with the offense because I think the offense is going to be very bad, and it would be ironic if Russell Wilson was the reason Mike Tomlin finally had a losing season. But I could just see Pittsburgh, Atlanta, first game, Kirk Cousins coming off the Achilles, no preseason work. Defense, Simmons, first game with this new defense, Judon, first game. Like, just a lot of newness on Atlanta as well. Arthur Smith is familiar with much of that roster, so he's going to be able to help on both sides of the ball game plan. And I just think this defense, could hold Atlanta to field goals. And you could look up in the fourth quarter and, it'll be like, 10-9 Falcons or something like that. So like that's if I gotta bet this game, that's the way I'm doing it. I'm gonna roll with Pittsburgh, but I'm not gonna be happy about it.
Yeah, it's a new scheme, new staff. Zach Robinson, OC, under Raheem Morris, new head coach. You mentioned the quarterback, and it's a fresh start. Yes, for the Bijans and Drake Londons and maybe Kyle Pitts. Maybe this is the year for Kyle Pitts. But there's a lot of newness in Atlanta. So speaking to what you guys were saying with Chicago, they do retain their head coach, but a lot of changes and not a lot of carryover from last year's team. Any thoughts here, Evan, on this game as it pertains to the Steelers getting 3 at Atlanta?
Raybon did say, and I'm going to agree, I think the line's right. I think 3 actually is the number, so I'm not sure I'm in love with this game either way, but I'm probably on the opposite side of Raybon if I had to make a pick in this one. I'd go Atlanta -3. I just can see so much going wrong on the pit. Now, listen, the 2 situations between Cousins against Pittsburgh's defensive line and Rodgers now against the San Francisco defensive line. I think those are the 2 situations off of injuries you probably have to be most worried about this week, and this is obviously one of those spots. But I kind of like Atlanta, at least at the field goal, no higher. And right now, looking at the Action Labs data, and this, I only say this because I laugh because it just changed, but Pittsburgh's the biggest public side this week, getting 3 points. So 23-20 again, maybe, 24-20, get a cover, but I think Atlanta's the right side. I'm not a big
Pittsburgh gives up 24 points. They're not winning this game.
Yeah.
Or covering, I don't think, honestly.
You're right.
I think this has to be a teens game for Pittsburgh where Atlanta moves it, but stalls out in the red zone because Cousins is not on the same page with, some of his new weapons.
Fair.
2 game previews here on NFL Roundtable. As we mentioned off the top, this is kind of a show that we will do some bigger picture topics, and week 1's a great week for that because we don't have any results. We don't have any games in hand yet. So from a bigger picture perspective going into week 1, we have 14 starting quarterbacks that haven't won a playoff game. Bo Nix, Anthony Richardson, Gardner Minshew, Tua, Sam Darnold, who's in Minnesota, Bryce Young, Derek Carr, Brissett and May being a rookie, Levis, Caleb Williams, Kyler, Herbert, Geno, Jaden Daniels in Washington. What's the thought process here, Evan, in terms of noting this particular stat?
I think Raybon is going to agree with me, at least off the top, on what the math says, and that's Miami, right? Like, if you were going to look at the 14 quarterbacks and say, okay, out of all of them, which either has the lowest odds to make the playoffs or has like the highest probability, it would be Tua and the Dolphins. But that's not the fun answer, and I don't even know necessarily if it's the right answer. I think from my perspective, if I was going to pick one of these guys and maybe be a little bit of like a outlier in a sense, I might actually go with the Levis Richardson side of this in that Houston division with Jacksonville as well. I think both of them could find, because I'm looking for, to me at least, the easiest division. Like, what's a path that one of these guys who we don't see as great right now or even good right now, like, could get to the playoffs and potentially get a home playoff game? So that was the direction that I headed, and I'm going to talk about Tennessee again in a second. I think they've improved a lot, and not that there was anything wrong with the Vrabel side, because I think we all disagreed with the firing, but I think they've upgraded the roster. So to me, it's probably a Levis Richardson situation. Raybon, I think you're going to look at it a little differently.
Yeah, so Miami, by the math, makes sense if you're just looking for the team most likely to make the playoffs, but that's kind of the status quo. We expect Miami to make the playoffs, and when they get to the playoffs, they'll probably – I think the Jets have an easier schedule, and Buffalo's probably a little bit better. So I don't think the Dolphins win the division, which means they probably go on the road in their first playoff game, right? So if they go on the road, there's a good chance you're facing either the Jets or Buffalo or Cincinnati or Baltimore or Kansas City. This is the AFC. So I think the Dolphins could kind of do what we expect and still not actually pay off that bet. So I'm going to go a little bit longer shot, but a quarterback who I think is even better, and that's Justin Herbert. And the reason being, the Chargers are, I think, a little bit less than 50-50 to make the playoffs. But if they do make the playoffs, that means a lot went right around Herbert, Like, we know what Herbert is, but the question marks are, can this skill position offense without Allen and Williams and Eckler, can they survive? Can Harbaugh kind of transform that defense and whatnot? So if that's all clicking, I think Herbert gives you as good a chance as any to win a game, even if it's on the road, because remember, they already don't have much home field advantage, so they'll probably be battle tested. They'll probably have won a bunch of road games just to get in. And then you look at Harbaugh, he's 44-19 and 1 career, made the playoffs in 3 of his 4 seasons as a head coach, including each of the first 3. He also won a playoff game in each of his first 3 seasons as head coach in 3 of 4. And he won playoff games with both Alex Smith and Colin Kaepernick. So, like, when I just put together the coach and the quarterback and I look for like a fringe team, I'm looking at the Chargers. Maybe it's the 7 seed and they're going to have a tough matchup. But, if any team can go on the road and knock off an AFC East team, I think the Chargers might have a shot. And if they end up playing like the Chiefs, hey, that's a division game. You never know what could happen there. So I do see the Chargers with a path here. And Herbert, he's good enough. I mean, what do you have, like a 30-0 lead last time he was in the playoffs? So
I was gonna say he got close enough.
Right, he was there.
We'll have more on quarterbacks in just a bit in terms of their meaning to the point spread here on NFL Roundtable. Evan Abrams also has his Week 1 betting trends, stats, notes, his Action Network betting primer for Week 1 available at actionnetwork.com and the Action app. Came out first thing Tuesday morning, so it's available to you now heading into Thursday and more importantly for Friday and Sunday. We got a Friday game this week in Brazil, of course. Okay, circling back to two games, looking at the highest total and the lowest total. What is likelier? New England and Cincinnati, and we'll get to Survivor too. We're going to do a quick Survivor minute on the first episode of NFL Roundtable. One of the most popular Survivor picks this week is Cincinnati, the only team laying more than a touchdown this week, hosting the Patriots. Totals at 40.5 for New England, Cincinnati. Vegas Chargers also has a total of 40.5. So which is likelier? Under in New England, Cincinnati, under in Vegas Chargers, or over in Rams, Lions, an NFC playoff rematch at 51? Evan.
So to be clear, that Rams one is also the highest total of the week. So you're going under the lowest or over the highest. To me, it's the Vegas Chargers game. I was laughing through Raybon's Herbert dialogue just because I'm very negative on the Chargers this year. I like under 9. There's some things that kind of scares me, even though I love Harbaugh. So I kind of see a low-scoring game with Minshew and the current Chargers offense, and especially the way that I kind of like Vegas's defense. So I was going to go under 40.5. That game opened 43.5, so down 3 full points in week 1's. Usually, historically, you don't have to worry about the line movement. Still goes under the closing total. So I kind of like under in that one.
Chris Raybon, those 3 games, highest high or lowest low?
I'm rolling with the Chargers, Raiders as well. And you got run heavy Greg Roman against the former Bears offensive coordinator. That's the coaching matchup. You have Herbert's first game with all these without over 50% of his career yardage and touchdowns in Allen Williams-Eckler. You have
Herbert
Minshew,
on an injury too.
Coming off an injury. Yeah. And you saw it happen to Burrow last year when he came into the year with an injury, which, he's doing again. But Gardner Minshew in his first regular season game in a new offense, with new teammates, not guaranteed to be on the same page. And remember, this Vegas defense, after 2 decades of futility, they allowed just 16 points per game in the 9 games after Antonio Pierce took over, 23.4 prior to that. So this became more of a run-heavy, hard-nosed defensive-minded team under Pierce, and I think that continues. And we know the Chargers, Harbaugh, Herbert with less passing game weapons, Greg Roman, the OC. This just screams like 17-13.
Okay, there you go. So they're going to lean under on Chargers and Raiders division matchup in week number 1. So I mentioned, we talked about quarterbacks, and we mentioned quarterbacks that didn't make the playoffs, 14 in the NFL that are set to start week 1, or maybe some combination. We mapped out Drake May and Jacoby Brissett being counted as one. There were 66 starting quarterbacks last year in the NFL. 66. And that speaks to the injury bug, and Aaron Rodgers, Joe Burrow are the first 2 that come to mind right away. Anthony Richardson was injured as well last year. Kirk Cousins, a big one, right, with the Achilles. So Sean Kerner did a great job of this. Kerner's going to be joining this show throughout the course of the year. But Kerner over at Action Network has a write-up from earlier in August, how much each quarterback is worth against the spread. So it's not this is more something to keep in mind going forward. Week 1, we know who's who at this point. The Patriots did name Brissett their starter. They were the last team to name their starter. But at some point, someone's going to get hurt or there's a change at quarterback. But I think it's fun to give the audience here, Evan, quarterbacks that mean the most to the spread. Can you guess the top 5 quarterbacks that have the most impact to a point spread?
So it's funny now seeing Raybon's list for the first time, right at this current moment. Some of them are very easy, and then I have one that's clearly missing, but I'll explain. So the first one that's super easy is obviously Pat. Mahomes is one. Wentz is his backup. I think that's enough said. 2, I have Josh Allen. Trubisky's the backup there, but what Allen brings to the game from rushing to just literally the entire package, I think it's enough to probably make him probably second on the list. 3rd is Lamar. I think same type of deal. His backup's Josh Johnson, who journeyman, been everywhere, but also pretty reliable on some level. I have 4 with Burrow. Now, we saw so much good out of Jake Browning last year. We almost probably said to ourselves, well, what level is each? Like, where does it start? Where does it end? So maybe it declined Burrow a tad, but I still have Burrow there. And then my 5th is Dak. Cooper Rush now in that second slot, but we're talking about the guy who probably had the career year last year. MVP status all around in all of his numbers. Obviously needed to get paid in this situation because whoever was going to go into that slot in place of him for Dallas was never going to be the right answer. Now, the one I know I'm missing here is Stroud. Backup, I believe, is Davis Mills. I think he's probably right there. I need to see one more year for at least. Now, Mills is terrible in a lot of situations, but I do think I need a little bit more meat on the bone. Okay, Raybon, hit me.
Mahomes Wentz is number 1 just because Mahomes is so good. Wentz is actually probably, like, for a starter, he's terrible. But in terms of backups, probably above average, I would say. So
That's
probably
fair.
one of their better backups.
It's Mahomes, Wentz, Zappy. That's the room.
Yeah, I mean, we're just going by the backup, right? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, even Zappy, that's a great third quarterback.
Correct.
Terrible starter and second guy. But yeah, that's just all due to Mahomes. Number 2 for me is C.J. Stroud, Davis Mills. C.J. Stroud, to me, is the closest thing to Mahomes. Davis Mills was probably not as good at this juncture as Case Keenum, but Keenum went on IR, so now Mills is the backup, and I just think that would be a massive downgrade. Lamar Jackson to Josh Johnson, number 3 for me, just because, I mean, Johnson's 38. I think they signed Huntley to the practice squad, but either way, Lamar just gives you so much as a runner and thrower, and it's hard to replicate with these, bargain bin guys that they trot out there when he's hurt. Number 4 for me, might be a surprise, but I think this guy's next up. Like, he's not quite on CJ Stroud levels, but he's coming, and that's Jordan Love. So I'm gonna go Jordan Love, Malik Willis, because we've seen Malik Willis start. Remember, they took Josh Dobbs off the street in a must-win game rather than start Malik Willis in Tennessee a couple years ago. But Green Bay's quarterback situation was so dire with Clifford and Pratt that they ended up trading for Willis. So now, Willis looks like he's going to enter the year as the backup to Jordan Love, and I just think that's a massive, massive drop off. And then number 5, it's kind of cheating here, but for the first 2 games, Stetson Bennett is going to be the backup to Matthew Stafford rather than Jimmy G. Now, Jimmy G is a great backup, kind of like Wentz, not great starter, but as a backup, pretty solid. But Stetson Bennett's horrible. I've been to Rams preseason game, at least one Rams preseason game. Each of the last few years. I think he's been in the league 2 years now. It hasn't been good, so I have zero confidence in Stetson Bennett. And Stafford just does so much. Whether it's at the line of scrimmage, the arm strength, just the leadership ability. So. Burrow, Browning is kind of on the fringe, but to me, like, Burrow so good. But the thing about it was Browning was actually kind of solid. And the big thing I always look for too is they didn't really have to change the offense too much when they went to Browning. Like, they still were able to go with a lot of their same concepts. So that's why I'm going to go with a guy like Love, Willis, and Stafford, Stetson, because I just think it would be such a big drop-off and such a bad performance by the backup if those guys were to go down.
I have so many questions.
Kerner ranks these in the write-up I mentioned a moment ago. So he's got Mahomes 1 at 6.5. This is the amount of points the quarterback is worth to the number. Lamar 5.5, Burrow 5.5, Stroud 5, Josh Allen 5. So Raybon leaves out Josh Allen. You both didn't mention Jalen Hurts, who is 6, so he didn't crack the top 5. But any quick follow-up on Raybon? Follow-up on Hurts? Any mention of Jalen Hurts?
So the thing, again, I thought we were talking about like the starter versus the backup. So the
Yeah, me
reason,
too.
like, I would actually have Stroud in that second tier, like with the other, like who do they have? Lamar. So I would have, and Allen too. So like Allen, Burrow, Stroud, all those guys to me are in that second tier. I don't have them that separate, but Mitch Trubisky, I mean, it's a big drop off, but compared to some of these other drop offs, no. And then Jalen Hurts is not there yet to me. Kenny Pickett now is really bad. So like Kenny Pickett,
He sucked in the preseason.
yeah. So that's the only thing is that if we're talking about the variance between the starter and the backup, Kenny Pickett could make a case for being bad enough, but Jalen Hurts is, I would have him about over a point, about 1.5 below that Stroud Allen tier. Like Jalen Hurts is good because like he's great, but really there's a lot of things around him, you know, whether it be the offensive line, you know, the two very good receivers, you know, there's just a lot of things along with Jalen Hurts that I think he hasn't taken that next step yet. And he still has some liabilities. Like last year, just couldn't handle the blitz. And this is going to be the first year he's actually making the O-line calls. So yeah, he's not in that same tier for me. But if Pickett continues to be that bad, then he's gonna be challenging for that top 5.
Malik Willis became the backup in Green Bay, and all of a sudden Jordan Love became a top 3 quarterback. That was what I was laughing about, because you're right.
Oh no, I think Jordan Love is he's not Stroud level, but if anyone enters that tier this year and people are like, oh, you know, okay, who's the next guy that's gonna kind of not maybe surprisingly enter the tier, but just take that step, I think it's Jordan Love. I think everything's there. I think the talent is there. He has the continuity, all the pieces around him. Like he can make all the throws, the leadership. I don't really see anything negative about Jordan Love. Period.
Yeah, so far from
And you got the head
what
coach.
we've seen, ridiculous. Yeah.
Offensive head coach too. No disrespect to Bobby Slowick in Houston, but
oh no, he's great too.
Yeah.
But like Stroud is just like he's like Stroud, any coordinator, he would be great, in my opinion.
okay, let's go to the next topic. Favorite division long shot. So this is something we'll work in futures on this particular kind of podcast on this kind of episode as the year continues. But this is good because we can get the numbers that are before the first games kick off. Favorite division long shot, Evan Abrams, that's 10-1 or higher. So your options being New England, Tennessee, Vegas, Denver, the Commanders, the Giants, Carolina, or the Cardinals.
So for me, this was just about reverse engineering the division to see who I thought had the best chance to, get to a top 2 slot. So I wanted to say Carolina and Arizona. I have bets on both of them. I have more on Arizona. I know this entire company is big on Carolina, but I do think Arizona is a good shot at this. My next thought was going to be Washington, because I'm not high on Dallas. I'm not high on the Giants. I think Philly wins a division. So I kind of liked Washington as a bit of a deep sleeper in this slot. But I'm going to go with Tennessee. Talked about it earlier.
Yep.
I think Stroud and Houston is definitely the class. I think the jump that they made from last year to this year, they're going to be just as good, if not a little bit better. But I just think there's a chance for other teams there. I'm not as up on the Colts in certain circumstances because I don't know about Richardson's health. And I think Tennessee's the right answer for me. But I do like Arizona as probably a B in that slot. You know what Raybon's going to say.
Carolina, baby. 12-1. I mean, we have precedent here, though, because I really like Canales as the head coach. Remember, he was working as a quarterback coach with Geno Smith in 2022 with Seattle. That team entered the year, Geno's first year starting for Russell Wilson. So, damaged goods, former first-round pick, enters the year, 5.5 is their win total. Canales has been working with him. And he has a career year, and they win 9 games, fly past their win total, and they get close. They don't, Niners are still there, but he also did the same thing with Baker Mayfield last year, and the Bucs did win the division. They had a win total of 6.5 entering the year, and they ended up winning the division and a playoff game to boot. So when I look at this division, kind of reverse engineering, like Evan said, I just don't want to bet against Houston, but I really do like Tennessee. I think and I mentioned the drop off from Stroud to Davis Mills, so there's absolutely a path for Tennessee in that AFC South. But the NFC South, I think, is the weakest division in football. Look at the three coaches. You know, Canales is the first-year head coach. He was the offensive coordinator of the Bucs last year, so first-year head coach. But look at the coaches he's going to be going up against twice each. Raheem Morris, career record 21-38, 356 winning percentage. That's the division leader. Todd Bowles with the Bucs. That's the team who won the division last year. He's 43-58, a 426 career winning percentage. The class of the division. And, of course, the odds-on favorite to be the first head coach fired, Dennis Allen in New Orleans, 24-46, a 343 career winning percentage. So, I mean, Carolina could go 5-1 against the NFC South. Like, it's not out of the question that Carolina goes over. Like, well, I got it at 4.5. I think it's at 5.5. I still like it too for even the win total. But Carolina could go over its win total in the division alone, depending where you got it. And if they do that, you know, it's not going to be – there's going to be a path to win that division. And the thing I like is the team with the best odds to win is Atlanta, but you have some fragility there, right? A lot of new pieces, and you have a 36-year-old quarterback, new team, coming off an Achilles injury. Just not a lot of – like, there's just not a lot of sample size to say, okay, he's going to be fine, or like guaranteed, or even to put odds on it, you know? Like, I know Marino, I think, came back from it, but that was in like what, the mid 90s, and he was fine. But we've seen like running back, like Cam Akers never got back. Like, it's just hit or miss with these Achilles. So I think there's some real downside to the Falcons, that if you take them out of the equation, then you're talking about the Bucs and the Saints. Yeah, give me Carolina all day.
Kirk Cousins, by the way, ranks 16th on Sean Kerner's quarterback spread rankings, 3 points, or 3 points to the spread. Okay,
Glass, let me give you one stat. So to kind of back up what we're talking about, it says looking specifically at the Falcons, Eagles, and Texans, 25 teams in the wild card era since 1990 have closed as an odds-on favorite of below 150. Only 7 of those 25 have won the division, so 18 didn't. So low favorites win the division. Kind of look somewhere else, and that leads to our Washington talks, our Tennessee talks, our Carolina talks. You usually find some of these numbers, so just a thought.
Raybon, you like this guy, Brad? Is it Idzick, the OC? He was in Tampa, the OC for Carolina. He was in Tampa as the receivers coach. This guy, is this going to be the guy to turn around Bryce Young? Is this guy going to be getting jobs, getting phone calls next January?
I think it's more Canales. Idzick is just kind of the. You know, like Canales is more like it's his offense. You know, he's the guy that's going to turn around Bryce Young. Idzick is just a guy he brought over to kind of, you know, oversee things. But Canales is the key. He's the guy that wherever he's gone, the quarterbacks have gotten better, and specifically, you know, highly drafted first round quarterbacks that were thought to be, you know, busts, damaged goods, whatever you want to call it. So. You know, they did the right things, right? It's not just because, remember, Carolina, it started in the front office. And the Giants kind of have this problem too, but it was, you know, Fitterer, bad GM. Before, they had Gettleman at one point. Like, just going back, like, Carolina's front office has been shaky. But, you know, now, you know, they bring in Canales, but they also bring in Hunt and Lewis on the interior line, which is key for a short quarterback. They bring in Johnson, who could separate, and they're going to put him back at X receiver where he had all his best years. And that's key because he's not only a separator, but he's a separator at X, which means he can line up on the line of scrimmage, beat, you know, press, coverage, whatever not. Not every team has that. And then you draft Leggett early in the draft. He's another guy who has some explosiveness. You know, Brooks eventually. Still, Thielen now is like a second or third option, is a lot better than, you know, as a number one option. So they put the pieces around him too, I think, to succeed. And that just was not there last year. Even the offense that Reich was trying to run, you know, the pieces didn't mesh. Nothing worked. It was just terrible. It was like Trevor Lawrence with Urban Meyer almost. That's how down I was on Reich last year. Like, I was fading the Panthers everywhere. because of Reich, and now I love them because of this hire.
Okay, a couple more quick topics, then we'll get out of here. We'll stay on Carolina. This is a great stat. When will Carolina break their streak and snap the ball with the lead in the fourth quarter? Evan, give us the stat on the Panthers, and then answer the question.
Yeah, Panthers didn't snap the ball while holding the lead in the fourth quarter of a single game last season. They won both of their games at the buzzer. They're the first team to do that in the wild card era since 1990. Dating back to last season, though, Carolina hasn't snapped the ball with lead in the fourth quarter since week 17 last year, 18 games ago, the year before. So the question is when do you think they're going to do it? Obviously, 4.5-point dogs, I believe it is, are down to 4 in week 1 in New Orleans. So if you don't like that one, I'm just going to say I think it's going to be week 2 at home against the Chargers. That is going to be what I'm going to say. They are going to lead that game in the fourth quarter. They'll probably be in the game against New Orleans, but behind. That's what I'll say.
Chris?
The Panthers are going to lead wire to wire in week 1. They're going to go down the field, opening drive, Bryce Young touchdown to Deontay Johnson. Derek Carr is going to turn it over on his first drive. The crowd is going to start chanting for Spencer Rattler by halftime, and Carolina is never going to relinquish the lead.
Love it.
But if you want some actual math, week 1 divisional dogs since 2010 per our Action Labs data have a winning straight up record. So these are underdogs in the division in week 1 have a winning straight up record, 40, 38, and 2, 51%. Of them have won outright. So the odds are in your favor by the math, but Dennis Allen, the favorite to be first coach fired. I would say Derek Carr, the favorite to be first quarterback benched.
Not Jacoby Brissett. Okay.
Because Spencer Rattler, with Brissett and May, they clearly have a plan, which is not to expose May to this horrible offensive line. So they're probably going to hold him out on purpose. But Carr Rattler is kind of like, okay, the Saints actually have expectations, but they have one of the worst offensive lines. I think PFF ranks them dead last, but that was probably before the Patriots showed their faces. Yeah. Yep. So I would say bottom 5, let's be generous, bottom 5 O-line and Derek Carr, that's a recipe for disaster. And Spencer Rattler has looked pretty good. So yeah, give me that. That's my bold call. Derek Carr, first quarterback bench of 2024.
Okay. Let's do, you guys want to do a favorite future or discuss a couple public sides? What do you guys want to do?
We can do public sides.
Okay. Top 3 public sides per the Action Network app. We mentioned Pittsburgh earlier. Pittsburgh getting 3 at Atlanta, 75% of the public coming in on Pittsburgh. Hold your thoughts there, pal. Baltimore, Kansas City on Thursday, 73% on Baltimore, getting 3 at KC, the reigning champions. And Friday's game, 73% of the cash coming in from the public on Green Bay, getting 3 against Philly. Raybon, your thoughts?
I feel like this, and Evan, maybe you back me up here, or I don't know if you agree or disagree, but I feel like this is the public trying to be sharp, but not quite getting it, because they're taking the +3s everywhere of, quality teams or, teams with a decent shot to win the game on the other side. But really, you want the hook. These +3s aren't really doing it for me. These are just kind of all 3 of them I look at and say, the line is more or less correct. Obviously it's a 3-point spread. You could make a case for the dog, but I think the most likely outcome for all those 3 games is just the favorite wins by a field goal. So I think the public is on the right track, but they're not really getting any value. You should be looking for, those 3.5, those 4.5, the Titans come to mind. So I don't know, Evan, what do you think?
I love the hooks, so I'm completely with you. I will say this, the 3 games, though, none of them, and I just look quickly, have hit the hook at all in the offseason. Mm-hmm. So, and right now, of the 3 games, they're all on 3, and I think I would see, at least looking at the numbers, so Casey's -102, you might see 2.5 in that one. So I don't know necessarily. Maybe Green Bay would get to 3.5, but I think the other 2 wouldn't dare. So I think it's a little bit of a stalemate. I also think you've got two of those games happening first. They're like the primetime games, and everyone kind of wants the points in those games.
Yeah. I'm like, why? Yeah, the public doesn't usually take dogs, but I think a lot because we talk about the public and being contrarian and tends to be more profitable. But remember, don't get that conflated with like it has no effect on what happens on the field.
None.
Like what's going to happen is going to happen, right? But it's weird to see the public 70+% on 3 dogs even in a given week. Like you don't always see that period. But I feel like there's a comfort thing here, Evan, where they look at these lines at 3, and the fact that it hasn't moved to 3.5, I think it actually makes some casual and newer bettors more comfortable because they're like, this is supposed to be a close game. I could see the dog winning here. Whereas when it gets to 3.5, like, it feels like the favorite's kind of pulling away. It's a little too good. The dog isn't projected to keep it within a field goal. I don't know. So I feel like this is kind of playing right into the book's hands here. With all the public on these dogs at 3 not getting the hook because I feel like they're more likely to just to push, or the favorite's just gonna cover.
Correct. Interesting though. So we'll see how the week progresses.
All right, fellas, I think that's it. I think we're out of time. Is that all right with you guys? This was fun. We worked a lot of stuff in.
Kill it. This is great.
All right, Raybon, thanks for being.
Sucks.
Well, and we were going to hit on coaches being fired, but I think we all agree Dennis Allen is definitely the first round. The first
Dave Canales. I wonder how that would have went.
Oh man, no.
Chris Raybon, our guest for week 1. Next week will be Brandon Anderson in for Evan. You'll put up with me again next week. So our first episode of NFL Roundtable going into week 1. So next week when we join you, we'll record next Tuesday, September 10th. We'll actually have games to talk about, and we'll overreact the shit out of them. So that'll be great. Thanks to Evan Abrams, Chris Raybon. Yeah, I mean, I'm just being honest. For Evan Abrams, Chris Raybon, Brendan Glasheen. Thanks for tuning in to episode 1 of NFL Roundtable here on the Action Network podcast. We'll see you.